2023, the year of the MMA underdog. There's never been a sure thing in this sport, but Jesus, Brent, mate, if there was ever a time for you to pull off this upset, oh baby. The underdog rule doesn't seem to apply to promotions though, with Bellator 300 looking like it might be one of the last hurrahs for the perennial bridesmaid of combat sports. But if they're going out, they plan to go out a kicking. We have 4 title fights on the line at Bellator 300 with a lot of like expected winners, which means a lot of potential for upset. 2 highly experienced female fighters in Cris Cyborg and Kat Zingano will tough it out for the featherweight title. Despite 4 wins in a row, Zingano isn't expected to get her hand raised for this one. Like, leaving the UFC was probably the best decision Cris Cyborg ever made. Like, for her record at least. Because she is unbeaten in MMA outside of the UFC. If there was ever proof that the level of competition at Bellator is lower, like both of these gals came across from the UFC following losses, both of them have had a lot more success at Bellator. It's not something that they're putting in the water at HQ, that's all I'm saying. The same could be said for Liz Carmouche. Like, the last time we saw her lose was in the UFC, and at least on paper I don't see that story not continuing against McFarlane. The closest fight, at least like from this kind of theoretical point of view, is probably Bader versus Vassell. Bader knocked Vassell out the first time they met, but that was 6 years ago. And it might only be close because of the redemption storyline that we're all getting caught up in and, you know, the aforementioned 2023 fucking curse. That knockout looked like it could be the start of the end for Vassell's career, but since then he's turned the beat around. He's on a 5-fight win streak, with 4 of those being TKOs/KOs, as if he is chasing down that KO take back. Putting the emotional storyline aside though, Bader is the champ. He's fought the higher level of competition, including wins over Fedor and Congo. I mean, come on, Bellator is like the retirement home for fighters. We all know that, right? We all know that, right? Right. And he's positioned himself as a Bellator legend in his own right. I think due to like styles, this fight might be close, but I do think we're going to hear and still quite a lot. Maybe just take that into consideration when you're refining the rules for your Bellator 300 drinking game. But of course, I brought you here to talk about Usman Nurmagomedov and whichever sacrificial lamb they've decided to throw his way for the next stage, potentially the last stage, who knows what's going to happen, of the Bellator Lightweight Grand Prix. I don't want to say this matchup would never have been made if it wasn't for the Grand Prix, but that is kind of what I'm saying. Brent has 2 losses in his last 3 fights, but I'm definitely not saying it's a sure thing. I don't want to be responsible for the 2023 curse striking down Usman in his prime, in his primus. Look, I'm still hurting from the Whittaker loss. I'm still not hurting, reeling, unbelieving of the Adesanya loss. I just don't want to tempt fate, okay? And Usman is just going from strength to strength. He just retired Benson Henderson with a perfect performance, a question mark kick to answer all questions. That bitch landed slicker than an Olympic gymnast. Like, give Henderson his due. He did fend off those choke attempts for a little bit, but Usman's got that worker spirit, baby. I do feel for Usman a little bit. Like, he's spoken about wanting new challenges, wanting to tough it out in deep waters, but he's playing in the kiddie pool while Islam battles sharks. But we're not looking past Brent, of course. You hear that, 2023? He's a BJJ black belt. He can be a nightmare to shake off when he grabs you on his own terms. He likes to implement a trip to get his opponents to the ground or shoot those doubles. His top pressure is good, passing seems to be a walk in the park, he's got great flexibility. He did massively out-grapple his last opponent. Another fight that he went into as a huge underdog due to only getting into the Grand Prix because Sydney Outlaw failed a drug test. He does seem to thrive when there's a chance to ruin the party, and getting a win over Usman would see all parties cancelled for the rest of time. Obviously Bellator's party is almost over anyway. His greatest claim to fame is his win over Michael Chandler, although Chandler questions the validity due to the injury that actually stopped the fight. But it was Brent's kick that caused the injury, so... But really, we all know that the TKO victory for that fight went to the stool. And Chandler did get that back in unanimous style, not with Brent. Even with all Brent's grappling prowess, I reckon Usman could take him down with his eyes shut and all his limbs tied behind his back. Nurmagomedov isn't one to play with his food. He likes to just get in, get the finish, get out. He's shown us arm bars, rear naked chokes, guillotines, but he's also shown us TKOs from punches, elbows, knees, to head and body. There are just so many places that he can take any fight. He uses his leg kicks really well, like slowing down his opponent's movement and taking away their power. He's slick from both stances, he manages distance really well, he keeps his guard tight, he's just continuously impressive. He's got so much confidence in his wrestling that he tends to put it on the back burner. He just prefers to stand and strike, and he's good at it. We love to see it. There's power and skills in those hands that shouldn't be overlooked just because of his surname. In a promotion where aging fighters go to get one last taste of glory, the young gun who's like been born and bred in the promotion, crafted in the overshadowing of a bigger name and not yet tempted into the light, is always going to be the biggest problem. Brent arguably had his time as champ and all kind of points in his favour were won a long time ago, but 2023 is all of our biggest opponents. Now, who knows what the hell is going to happen to Bellator and to the Grand Prix, but I hope we're in for one hell of a production at 300 and maybe some big upset. I wish I could say that we'll be watching it together next week, but UFC 294 is just around the corner and I need to start gushing. Take that however you want, babes.